Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this Beyond the PPL workshop brought to you this evening by Astral Aviation Consulting on behalf of the UK Civil Aviation Authority. If you want to stay in the loop with events and resources, please sign up to our mailing list. And you can do this by going to our website, www.astralaviationconsulting.com, or use the link that's just appearing in the chat box. Signing up also gives you access to the replay of this workshop and a whole host of other safety resources. This evening, Chris is away, so he's entrusted the controls to myself and Nigel. So I'm hosting and delighted to be joined by my fellow examiner, Nigel Wilson. Nigel's also a head of training, very, very experienced FI and a display pilot, and he runs the Easy PPL Ground School, which provides online courses for student pilots, licensed pilots, instructors, and training organizations. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to break this workshop down into some easily digestible chunks, and we're going to cover what options there are post gaining your PPL, a look at a few of those, and in particular, some additional ratings and qualifications you can easily achieve and aim for. And then finally, after the hour, it will be time for Q&A, which we'd love you to take part in. So if you do have any questions, please add them to the Q&A box, which is separate to the chat box there as well. There's lots of info tonight. Some of it we will have to go quite quickly in the subject of time. So you may want to watch and pause the playback to get some of the information, especially some of the detailed text that's on the screen. And we've deliberately designed it that way so you can pause and re-look at things on the replay as well. Also, we're only going to give a snapshot of the things that you can do beyond PPL just to whet your appetite and signpost to them. So we won't be able to go into massive depth on all of these. So please, like I say, if there's more information, look on the website and the replay afterwards. Just to kick us off tonight, I'd like to find out if any of you are affiliated to any flying organisations. And this is so we can make sure we help ensure that our links with organisations and individuals are maintained to make sure you get the very best and most up-to-date safety information at all times. So let's go for our opening poll and let's have a look. We'd like to know if you're affiliated to a local flying club, larger organisation, or are not part of anything. So if you could choose there, whether it's a local flying club, B, a larger organisation such as the LAA, OPA, BGA, etc., both A and B, or none of those as well. So I'll let you have a look and just put that result in. Some people have also commented that the chat box function may be having a problem for some of you. Talifa, our tech support, is working on that in the background. So if there's any issues, bear with us on that as well. Thanks very much. Let's have a look at the results of that poll, please, Talifa. There we go. So we've got quite a few of you are members of those representative organisations. So that's brilliant. Great to see that you're supporting those very important parts of our GA community. Let's move on then to, before we do this, a little bit about the regulatory context that I'm going to do. Now, please don't switch off at this point. Don't run away and think, oh no, Matt's going to give us a boring lecture. It's not. It's a very little bit of quick scene setting before Nigel gets to talk about all the really interesting and exciting things as well. But let's just see how much some of you know already. Let's have another quick poll to open this section. So for the UK licensing purposes, what kind of aircraft is a PA-28 Warrior? And that poll should just be coming up now. Part 21 aircraft, a non-Part 21 aircraft, a microlight, or an EASA aircraft. So there we go. For UK licensing purposes, I say the emphasis deliberately. What kind of aircraft's a PA-28? Part 21, non-Part 21, microlight, or EASA aircraft? Make your choices. So let's have a look what results we got there. 80% got that it is a Part 21 aircraft, which of course is exactly the right answer there. A, And a Part 21 aircraft would have been an EASA aircraft while the UK was still a member of the EU. So quite a few are obviously getting used to the terminology that's now been used in the regulatory. So brilliant, excellent. Right, moving on. So the regulatory context then, and like I say, it's very important because we're going to talk about things that we can add or explore in our licenses. So it's important we just understand a little bit about this background here. So Part 21 aircraft would have been EASA aircraft while the UK was still a member of the EU. Most modern factory-built aircraft, other than microlights and gyroplanes, are considered Part 21 aircraft. So your typical PA-28 Warriors and Cessnas and things like that. Now, the non-Part 21 aircraft are regulated by the UK Air Navigation Order 2016. Vintage and ex-military aircraft, amateur-built aircraft, microlights, gyroplanes are normally non-Part 21. And such aircraft will have a certificate of airworthiness or permit to fly issued under the ANO 2016, unless they're exempt from airworthiness certification. There's a few ones of those as well. Now, Part FCL licenses are issued under the UK Aircrew Regulation, and they're required to fly these Part 21 aircraft and helicopters. Now, if you had a Part FCL license issued while the UK was still a member of EASA, that absolutely continues to be valid on UK registered Part 21 aircraft. They were just deemed to be UK Part FCL licenses at the cutover. And now Part FCL licenses can also be used to fly a non-Part 21 aircraft of an equivalent category and class. So you could go and fly a permit JODL, for example, with your Part FCL license, no problem at all. Now, licenses issued under the ANO may only be used to fly non-Part 21 aircraft, with the exception that you may use an ANO license to fly a Part 21 aircraft under Part NCO, which is the non-complex. And it's within the privileges of the following ratings. So SEP, SSEA, self-launching motor glider, and touring motor glider. So that kind of light GA ones there as well. Now, there are lots of further nuances to all of this, and we could do an entire seminar on this, which we're not going to be doing. You'll be very, very happy to know. But the reason I talk about this is it's important to understand the regime your intended aircraft and license will be used for and what you're operating under there as well. If you're unsure, please seek guidance from an association or one of your friendly local flight examiners. And the CAA are running a very large project to try and review and simplify all GA licensing. There's been some consultations recently on that, and further information on how they're actually going to simplify it and their detailed proposals are expected in 24, 25, the latter part of this year. For this seminar tonight, we're just going to be discussing UK Part FCL situations. Please note that some of the ANO situations may be slightly different, but we're just going to talk to Part 21s, otherwise it just gets far too complicated trying to cover both as well. There we go. I can see some people are saying hello in the chat box and some questions are popping in as well. So hopefully those are all working very much as well. Talitha has just confirmed that in the chat as well. So the internet gremlins have obviously got from West Oxfordshire up to the northwest where Talitha is as well. But hopefully they haven't got over to the east of England, because I'm going to hand over to Nigel to talk about night ratings. Over to you, Nigel.
Okay, so first thing we're going to look at tonight then is what you can do post PPL, and that's to get a night rating. So before we get into that section in detail, let's have a quick start with a poll, just like we always do. So this will test your knowledge. So what's the minimum ceiling, that's the cloud base, and visibility required for a VFR flight at night in Class G airspace? That's uncontrolled airspace. So is the answer there isn't any difference to the day VFR requirements, or is it B, 1,500 feet above ground level and 5 kilometers visibility? Is it C, 1,500 feet above ground level and 1,500 meters if you're below 3,000 feet, and if you're in sight of the surface, and if you're at 140 knots or less? There's a lot of ands in there. D is 500 feet above ground level and 3 kilometers? Remember, we're talking about the cloud base here, is what the requirement is. Or is it E, 500 feet above ground level and 1,500 meters if below 3,000 feet above sea level, and inside the surface and at 140 knots or less once again? So I don't propose to read all that again because they're quite long. So I'll give you just a few seconds just to gather your thoughts. Okay, let's have a look then and see what the results were. Okay, so there's a pretty big match there between some of you thinking it's A, there aren't any difference to VFR, and then it's C, 1,500 feet. Okay, and actually it's B. So just to prove a point, you probably remember you did all of the night questions when you went back and did air law, and as we'll come on to, part of the night rating is to refresh your knowledge on those things. So let's go on to the next slide then and have a chat. So the night rating is actually quite a common extension of the license, and it not only offers the ability to plan to fly at night, but also keeps you out of trouble if your day flight ends up being delayed, like, you had to wait for fuel that took forever to arrive and now you're late. So instead of having to wait until the next day, you can get back to your airfield, providing, of course, it's still open, even after the sun has set. So what does it allow you to do? So the night rating allows the holders to fly at night, and that's defined as 30 minutes after sunset until 30 minutes before sunrise. And obviously, you'll need to have a valid class and type rating for the aircraft concerned, as well as having a night rating on your license. So if you have an instrument qualification, the night rating also allows you to exercise that privilege at night. Otherwise, you can't. And you're also able to take passengers at night, but there's a caveat, but only if you've performed at least one out of the 3 required takeoffs and landings that you have to do anyway, within the required 90 days. If you've done one of those at night, then you can take passengers at night. And there's a common misconception here about those landings. There's no such thing in the regulation as sole manipulation of the controls anymore, nor is there any requirement that they have to be undertaken as PIC. So you can actually do the landings while you're PUT and they still count towards your 3 and 1. So let's go on to the next slide then and have a look at, in fact, it's the next one after that. Thanks, Matt. The VFR night rules, okay? So you won't find this slide anywhere apart from here and a certain ground school organisation. So just to re-emphasise that night VFR rules are different to day VFR rules. So the UK stipulates that you can't fly below 500 feet above ground level over an obstacle within 150 metres radius of the aircraft. And you can't fly below 1,000 feet over the highest point of a congested area within 600 metres radius of the aircraft either. So the important thing there, the difference between day and night, is the 500-foot rule is not 500 foot away. It's a minimum height above ground level of 500 feet. The pure CIRA rules don't include that 500 feet. So if you go night flying abroad, you need to be careful because the 1,000-foot rule applies everywhere. And that includes 2,000 feet over high ground, and that's within a radius of 5 nautical miles of the aircraft. There's a couple of other differences as well. In the UK, you're able to get a special VFR at night in a CTR, but in Europe, you can't. You can only get special VFR in controlled airspace CTRs during the day. So like I said, you just have to have your wits about you. You really do. So that slide there, just to re-emphasize, says that you need a minimum cloud base of 1,500 feet to fly at night. Okay. Also, you need 5 kilometers. There is none of the stipulation about being able to, if you're flying at less than 140 knots or less, to then reduce that to 1,500 meters. So flying at night VFR, 5K VIS, 1,500 meters is what you need. The other thing to be aware of is that not all aircraft are authorised to fly at night. That will be stated on the certificate of airworthiness or the permit to fly, and you need to check that quite carefully. Flying at night also requires a minimum level of cockpit equipment over and above that required for daytime flight. So if any of that night equipment is unserviceable, then you can't fly at night. And a very obvious one to think about would be like if you haven't got a landing light, you can't fly at night. Not because it's, you need it to see in the air or anything, but how are you going to taxi to get to the runway? Okay, so that's just a very obvious one. So let's move on to the next slide then and see if you can have a quick guess as to where that is. So you can put it in the chat box. We're not going to pause because we've got a lot of coverage to do tonight. So not only is it a great rank to have to cater for the unexpected, it's also great fun to fly at night since the scenery is just so different. It's also a great way to watch fireworks from above on the 5th of November. And you'd be surprised how high the fireworks don't go. So flying at night also sharpens you up as a pilot in general, not only from the flying perspective, but also from a captaincy point of view with regards to threat and error management. And those go, no-go decisions, since mistakes and errors at night, by their very nature, tend to have larger consequences. So let's talk about the training then. How do you get a night rating? So,
Nigel, you've got to tell everybody where it is first, my friend.
Oh dear. All right. Okay. So that is London, and down the bottom there is the Thames Barrier. Okay, and that's as far into London as you can get in a single engine piston without going into the TMA. Okay, so there you go. Yeah, good point. I could have kept you on tenterhooks till the end of the session. Right, so how to get a night rating? So the requirements are quite straightforward. You have to do at least 5 hours of flight time in the appropriate aircraft category at night, obviously, including at least 3 hours of dual instruction and at least 1 hour of cross country. That is also dual. And at least one dual cross-country flight of at least 50 kilometers or 27 nautical miles. It's actually quite a small cross-country you have to do. And then you also have to do 5 solo full stop takeoffs and landings. So if you don't operate on a Class 1 or Class 2 medical, then you also have to undergo a colour sight test, and you can get more information on that on the medical CA medical site as well. Before you complete the training at night, LAPL holders also have to have completed the basic instrument flight training part required for the issue of a PPL, because there is a little bit of instrument flying at night, as you'll find out when you do the training. So your training also encompasses where it's possible landing at both major airfields with fantastic lighting that makes it look like daylight, and also some really small airfields with, you know, sort of the makeshift lighting where the surroundings are often very dark, and it really does become a bit more akin to an arcade game rather than landing at an airfield. And you need different skill sets for each of those aspects of flying. And that all should be included in your flying toolbox for when you fly at night. You can, interestingly, train to fly at night during your PPL course. However, the 5 hours required will need to be in addition to the existing requirement, hours requirement for that license training for. And don't forget, you also have the added complication that the night rating requires solo flight. So you need to be at a suitable stage in your training to be able to do this as well. There's one final thing that you need to remember, and that's that the 5 hours of night training has to be completed within a single 6-month continuous period. So that can put the scuppers on it in the UK when you only have sort of a set period of time around sort of November through to February to actually do it. You can't split it over another year. So how do you get one then? Let's talk about the knowledge then. So the rating requires, as we saw, some training to the Part FCL syllabus and involves both theoretical knowledge and flight training. It's a refresher of the theoretical knowledge as well. And note that the theoretical knowledge is actually included in the Basic 9 PPL theoretical exam. So it might have been a while since you did those. However, you know, you need to be able to refresh them because that's still part of the night rating itself. And as we all saw from the poll, okay, there's a few of us out there that maybe need to have a little bit of a refresh on the night VFR rules. Okay, so that's night rating in a nutshell, a real whistle-stop tour. So it's back to Matt.
Thanks, Nigel. And I echo exactly what Nigel says. It really is quite a magical rating and a great one to have in your toolbox. Of course, any of you that want to go on to do a CPL as well will obviously need to get a night rating done as well. Nigel, I know, will probably smile when I say this. As an instructor and head of training, the number of people I get asking me to do a night rating in June and July because they're going on the CPL course. Nigel's laughing, so he has this a lot, obviously, as well. So if you've got any aspirations to go commercial, it's well worth getting the night rating done, and then you've just got it in your bag, and you don't have to worry about it if you get an opportunity to do a CPL course as well. So it's another good one there as well. So let's have a look at our next rating we want to have a look at, which is the aerobatic rating. Let's start with a quick poll and see if anybody knows this. What qualification or course requires mandatory spin training? Let's bring the poll up, please, and have a look at the options that people can choose from on this one. So, what course qualifications requires mandatory spin training? Is it the PPL? Is it the CPL? Is it the flight instructor course? Or is it the multi-engine piston rating? So PPL, CPL, flight instructor, or multi-engine piston. Have a look at there. So which is the highest, or which course do you think is the one that requires mandatory spin training? Let's have a look at the results. Yes, many of you got it right. Of course, the answer is C, the flight instructor course as well. The CPL course doesn't require mandatory spin training as well. Mandatory spin training was removed from the PPL syllabus in around 1982 and was replaced by spin avoidance training. So this is going into an aerobatic rating. You may not have experienced spinning at all, and this might be a good opportunity to do that. So let's have a look at what we've got. So the aerobatic rating is another rewarding extension of the license. FCL 800 states holders of a pilot license for aeroplanes, TMG, and sailplanes shall only undertake aerobatic flights when they hold an aerobatic rating. And the aerobatic rating is a lifetime rating, and it may be undertaken by any pilot with a UK issued license who's completed at least 40 hours of flight time as pilot in command in the appropriate aircraft category since the issue of their license. Now, that one is a little bit odd, but that is what the regulation says, that you have to get some experience post your license issue before you can undertake an aerobatic rating. However, as Nigel reminded me the other day, that's for the application for the rating. So there is nothing stopping you undertaking the course, but you can only apply for the rating once you've made that requirement. So what benefits could undertaking an aerobatic rating? Well, these are some of the things that Nigel and I, when we're brainstorming this, thought about this as well. It definitely increases your awareness and safety, definitely will give you more confidence in handling and decision making, and it is very addictive. It's really enjoyable. It's really challenging, both physically and mentally. And we think it will reinvigorate your interest in flying. It's definitely expanding your personal envelope and giving you that confidence and enjoyment and knowing how to explore the boundaries of what your aircraft can and can't do. And as that, it will fundamentally give you a better pilot and teaching you a new set of skills. So it's something well worth doing. And remember, aerobatic flying is not all about competition flying as well. So a lot of people think about aerobatics as kind of competition and display flying, very harsh maneuvers close to the ground. That really isn't. So I fly and teach aerobatics a lot. All of my aerobatics are up at 4,000 or 5,000 feet, well above from the ground. Nice, gentle maneuvers with periods of straight and level in between and things like that. So it's not all about the kind of fast jet display stuff that you see low down. So how do you get down? Ground and flight training is required, and you need to complete a training course at a DTO or an ATO. And that will have to include some theoretical knowledge instruction and 5 hours or 20 flights of aerobatic instruction in the appropriate aircraft category. And this may include dual and supervised solo training flights. It's important to remember that 5 hours is actually of aerobatic training. So the time taxiing and landing and coming back doesn't count towards that as well. So in terms of actual chalk to talk time, your aerobatic course would be a little bit longer than the 5 hours. So that was a very, very quick canter through the aerobatic rating. And very much some benefits of it. And again, another really achievable rating to get, and it lasts for a lifetime. There's no actual test on it either. Like the night rating, there's no test. It is a training course to demonstrate competence in that as well. One thing to note is under the old A&O rules, you didn't require an aerobatic rating to go and say if you were flying an old UK PPL, flying aerobatics in a Chipmunk, you wouldn't need to do it. But training and competence checking is very, very highly recommended. If you're using a Part FCL license of any description, you will need an aerobatic rating to fly aerobatics there as well. Just before I hand back to Nigel, who's going to talk all about instrument flying qualifications, I'm just going to have a look through the chat box. And yep, the night rating is also a lifetime rating as well. It doesn't expire once it's on your license as well. Some good discussion about landing lights and lights, which we haven't got time to go into depth, but again, some good discussion there. We can follow up on that with, if you like, as well. Some of you are asking how to contact us as well. Talitha has put a good email address in the chat box should you wish to confirm there as well. And Jonathan Harbottle is not convinced about flying in a single without a parachute as well. So there we go. Yes. Your personal risk assessment will have to dictate whether you're happy flying single engine at night, just as much as if you're happy flying single engine over water as well. But that's something that you will have to discuss, like saying your personal risk assessment and whether you're content doing it and whether you wish to modify what you do in that. I know some people that are quite happy to fly at night in and around the circuit environment, but don't really do cross countries at night. So it's very much how you wish to assess that yourself. Nigel, back to you to talk about the detailed subject of instrument flying.
I will. There was just one other comment on there about, do AOPA write the rules? I'm assuming that's for the aerobatic rating. The answer is no. The rules are in Part FCL. AOPA do an aerobatic syllabus, which you could follow, that satisfy the requirements, but there we go. Right, so instrument flying qualifications then. So let's start with a poll. Let's give you a little bit of a test then to see how much you remember from your air law. So here's the question. Which of these statements are correct for a PPL without any form of instrument qualification? So a fresh PPL, straight out pass skills test, what is correct? So A, can you fly using special VFR in a Class D CTA? Question B, can you operate under IFR if you're maintaining VMC? And if all these are foreign terms, we'll cover them in a minute. Can you operate IFR if maintaining VMC in Class G or uncontrolled airspace? Option C, can you operate under VFR in VMC? Or sorry, you can only operate under VFR in VMC and may fly above cloud out of sight of the surface. And D, you can accept and fly an IFR clearance, but only if it's proposed by the air traffic service unit concerned and providing VMC is maintained in controlled airspace. So those are your choices. Bit of a weasel of a question, this one. So we'll give you a few seconds just to think about that. Don't you just love air law, hey? Okay, and let's have a look at the results then. So, oh, dearie me. So, the correct answer was C. You can only operate you can only operate under VFR in VMC. And interestingly, if you're above 3,000 feet, you may fly above cloud and out of sight of the surface, even if you don't hold an instrument qualification. Okay. A is wrong, by the way, because it's you can't get a special VFR in a CTA. That's airspace that does not touch the ground. You can only get special VFR in a CTR, in other words, airspace that touches the ground. Okay, so let's move on then. So let's have a quick chat about instrument flying qualifications in general. So do you want to fly in cloud? Then this could be for you. You remember, of course, that without an instrument qualification, you must remain VMC and only fly in VFR conditions. And again, we're going to come on to what those mean in a sec. Depending on the instrument qualification you choose, it depends on the privileges that you're afforded, and not all instrument qualifications are equal. And we're going to have a look at a couple of those as we go through this evening. So let's talk again, another slide, if you don't mind, about instrument flying qualifications then. So why is it worth getting an instrument qualification? Well, lots of people think it's a bit of a get out of jail free card, but actually that's not the case. And actually, if you think like that, you're in a particularly probably pretty dangerous attitude mindset to do that, because if you don't keep up to speed, then you don't have currency, then you're going to be in trouble if you suddenly decide you want to fly in instruments. So it's no use trying to expect to be able to form that instrument approach into an airfield when it's turbulent, raining, cold, and a low cloud base, unless you keep up that proficiency. All right. So having said that, you still be in with a better chance of getting on the ground in one piece rather than a VFR pilot who's not done any instrument flying since the PPL course. So again, you need to think about this carefully. All instrument qualifications require a greater, more refined skill set. You'll become a better VFR pilot by doing some instrument qualification, doing an instrument qualification course, and you'll also become a better captain from your exposure during the training to even more threat and error management considerations too. So just beware, though, don't underestimate the theoretical knowledge level nor the skill level required to gain any of those instrument qualifications. Even the most basic qualifications, which we're going to cover in a second, the IRR, is a big step up from basic PPL knowledge and flying skill required. So I kept alluding to this thing about we'll cover it, what VFR, IFR, VMC is all about. So let's just take a look at what that is all about now then. So on the next slide then, so first of all, flight rules. So when you're flying, a pilot must abide by one of the rule sets. You can't fly under nothing. Okay, you have to fly either under VFR or IFR. So can we have the next slide, please, Matt? I think it's on that one. Okay, thanks. So the visual flight rules are contained in CIRA. The references as 5001, 5005, and 5010, and they're basically the low flying prohibition rules, amongst others. So, for example, not flying below 1,000 feet over the highest obstacle of a congested area within a radius of 600 meters of the aircraft. That's typically one of the VFR rules as well. So a PPL, a basic PPL, fresh out of your skills test without any instrument qualification, is limited to flying VFR only. So that's nothing to do with the privileges of a PPL, but all to do with a restriction that's implied in Part FCL, which actually says, it's FCL 600, that that operations under IFR requires an instrument qualification. So in other words, it's sort of defined back to front. It doesn't say you must fly VFR. It says you can't fly IFR unless you have an instrument qualification. So the FCL 600 in general, then it actually says this: except as provided in FCL 825, which is another caveat, operations under IFR on an aeroplane shall only be conducted by holders of a PPL, CPL, MPL, or ATPL with an IR on aeroplanes or when undergoing skill test or dual instruction. So the instrument flight rules, then moving on, are a different set of rules that are also contained within CIRA. So basically, it's a new set of minimum height rules. It's the requirement to use flight levels. There's something called a semicircular rule, the direction you have to travel, the height you have to fly depending on the direction you're traveling in. The requirements for flight plans, the requirement for a position report on the RT, and compliance with ATC clearances for flight in controlled airspace. So, for example, One of the IFR minimum height rules is to not fly below 1,000 feet over the highest obstacle, sounds familiar so far, anywhere, including the ground, within a radius of 5 nautical miles of the aircraft. So instead of 600 meters, it's now 5 miles. And also not below 2,000 feet above high ground within 5 miles also. So they're the rules that we follow. So what's this VMC and IMC thing? So let's look at that. So in order to fly the visual flight rules, you have to have certain weather conditions. So for each type of airspace, as in class A, B, C, D, CIRA defines what the weather conditions must be in order to fly VFR. So these weather conditions are otherwise known as meteorological conditions, and they're made up of 3 parameters. So the parameters are the visibility, the altitude of the aircraft, and the distance from cloud, both horizontally and vertically. So VMC, visual meteorological conditions, is a set of minimum weather conditions that then allows flight under VFR. So if any one of those conditions for VMC is not met, then the conditions become IMC, instrument meteorological conditions. And then that means you can't fly under the VFR rules. So let's move on to a quick summary slide then. It's difficult to do this quite quickly. And you can come back, as Matt said, in the replay and just pause a little bit over this bit. So in summary then, you cannot fly under VFR if the conditions are IMC, in other words, less than the VMC minimum. You have to fly IFR when the conditions are IMC. But here's an interesting twist, that if you are allowed to fly IFR, you can opt to fly under that rule set, even if it's VMC as well. Okay, so we've mentioned, we included a special mention of special VFR for completeness. So special VFR is a little bit of a godsend to get through controlled airspace, in other words, a CTR, controlled zone. So it's allowed, special VFR is allowed when the VMC minima doesn't meet the MET requirements for VMC in a CTR, but it's above the special VFR meteorological conditions. Okay, so special VFR has got a lower set of VMC conditions, and the special VFR conditions are you have to have a flight visibility of at least 1,500 meters. You have to be clear of cloud, and you have to be inside of the surface. So if you meet all of that criteria when you're in a CTR, then you're allowed to request a special VFR clearance from the controller. Okay, so let's
Nigel, we've just got a couple of questions. Lots of people saying, how do they keep up on all of this stuff? And I think it's worth mentioning that the Skyway code does have some information, and there's some quite useful diagrams in the Skyway code. Alternatively, you could buy Nigel a few beers in a pub and he could spend a fun night telling you about it. We've also got a question: why would a private pilot choose to fly under IFR when conditions are VMC? Do you have a view on that one, Nigel?
Yeah, basically you can fly IFR when you're VMC, because flying IFR lets you go into controlled airspace that you might not be able to get access to as well. So it's also an additional safety net. It also means that you can make a use of, when you fly IFR, 2 more of the flight information services outside of controlled airspace, as it happens. So under VFR, you're only allowed to request of a basic service and a traffic service. Under IFR, even though it might be a gin clear, sunny day, you can then make use of, if you so required, a deconfliction service as well. Okay, which will give you, maneuvers to get you out of the way of another aircraft. The controller might not be very happy about giving it to you if it's a nice clear day, but you could ask for it. So there's ways and means of doing that. So let's have a look at the IR restricted then. So most of the old hands here will know that as the IMC rating. It's the same thing. It goes by two different names. So there's a bit of myth busting here then. So the instrument rating restricted is exactly the same as the old IMC rating. It's just called two different things depending on which license it's being placed upon. So if you've got a Part FCL license, it's called an IRR. If you've got an old UK CAA license, then it's called an IMC. So that's the only difference between them. There's no difference in privileges. So the training then basically comprises of a minimum of 15 hours of flight training, of which at least 10 hours must be by sole reference to instruments. And it has to include at least two different types of approaches into airfields. There's a theoretical knowledge training as well that's required to be able to pass the written exam paper, and it really is still a written exam paper. It's a paper exam that you get asked to do. There are time limits on the validity of the theoretical knowledge exam paper and the flight test prior to the application for the rating. So that's 12 months for the exam pass, and then 21 months for the application. And the flight test that you do is valid for 9 months for the rating application as well. So you just need to have those things in mind, and you have to sit the exam paper before you do the flight test as well. That's a requirement too. There's also some prerequisites, much like the aerobatic rating that you saw, in that you have to, before application to the CAA, you have to have done at least 25 hours total experience as pilot of aeroplanes, including the issue of, following the issue of the PPL license. Interestingly, the 15 hours of the IMC rating can count towards those 25 hours. And you have to have at least 10 hours of piloting command on aeroplanes, of which 5 hours piloting command on cross-country flights. And again, that's since your PPL license issue. You also must hold a radio license, FRTOL. The rating is valid for 25 months. Basically, it's valid from the day of the test for 25 months to the end of that month. There is no revalidation by experience. You revalidate or renew the rating by a further test. Okay. The privileges, just that we got on the screen there, basically says, there's no minimum visibility requirements during the flight. You can fly IFR in any class of airspace except Class A. Not that we have much of that in the UK, and unless it's the TMA, where you can't go in there anyway. You must have at least 1,500 meters visibility to take off and land anywhere beneath cloud. And there's a recommended minimum that you actually use the higher of either 200 feet above the published minima for that approach, or an absolute bottom height of 500 feet above ground for a precision approach and 600 feet above ground for something called a non-precision approach. The difference between those two: precision approach means you've got vertical guidance. Non-precision approach means you don't have vertical guidance, you don't have a glide slope or a glide path, but you're just having to busk that, for want of a better word, by making sure you hit certain altitudes at certain distances from the runway. Okay, so that's the IR restricted. So let's go the next level up then, and have
Just
a
before
look
we
at,
do that,
yeah,
Nigel, we've got a question.
yeah, carry on.
There's somebody saying, what would you recommend first, the night rating or the IRR?
You can, I'm not, Matt, you might be able to answer this because I haven't done it for quite a while, but I believe there used to be a little bit of credit you can have. If you have a night rating to begin with, you get a little bit of time off the IMC, but I'm not sure whether they took that
I
away.
think that's gone now.
Yeah,
So
I think that's gone as well.
I
Yeah.
don't think there's any actual benefit. And what I would say is it probably depends on availability of airfields, what time of year you are, and things like that as well. And somebody's also made the point as well that the IRR is restricted to UK airspace as well. Absolutely. So yeah,
it's restricted to UK airspace and also some principalities. So you can use it in the Channel Islands, for example, as well. They've agreed that that is a valid rating in the Channel Islands on to access their controlled airspace too.
Yeah,
so
massively.
It's mainly the UK. Certainly nothing in Europe. Put it that way. Right. So let's talk about the full IR then. So there's two paths that you can go to a full IR. There's something called the modular instrument rating, and that's the route that most people take who are coming up through the ranks to go commercial. And they go the CPL, then they do the IR rating in that way. There's another thing for those of us that have, been flying for a bit, so to speak. Maybe you've got your IRR. There's something called the competency-based modular instrument rating, the CBM-IR. Okay. So before we do that, before we talk about those, the interesting thing is that whichever route you take, your privileges are exactly the same at the end of it. You end up with a full instrument rating. Okay, that's the important bit. So privileges then on the next slide, if we can. The modular IR route, as we said, is taken by parts working from the bottom up and typically undertaken as part of their modular training from a PPL to a CPL IR, and possibly then onto an ATPL to go in the front of a big jet carrying 300 people. So the CBM IR is a competency-based approach. Probably more applicable, as we said, to parts who hold a PPL ready and have done some other form of instrument qualifications like the IMC, or indeed, if you hold a foreign-based instrument rating, an ICAO-based instrument rating on a different license, then you can take this route here as well to get the UK one. Like I said, both ratings require extensive theoretical knowledge training, and I do mean extensive, okay? And testing, which can either be a subset of the CPL, ATPL theoretical knowledge exams, and that's applicable to both the IR and CBM IR, or there is some, there are some organizations that do a CBM IR specific theoretical examination, okay? The pilot who's undertaken the ATPL or CPL theoretical exams, will have IR endorsed on the license, and the pilot who's taken the specific CBM IR theoretical exam, that's the only time that there's a slight difference in that they have CBM IR endorsed on the license. The flying privileges are identical. The only difference there is to record that this particular pilot has used the CBM IR theoretical knowledge exams, so they can't then use that towards credit for a later commercial parts license or ATPL license. Okay, it's just recording the fact they've taken a different exam. Don't underestimate the level of knowledge nor the flight training required for the IR, either one of them. Okay, it's a bit like jumping from GCSE to degree level in both theoretical and practical terms. Okay, flight tolerances are tight, as you would expect on test, and the examiners don't take no prisoners. All right, this is a real proper PACA, instrument rating to the fine tolerances that are required. It's got a very procedural and commercial aspect feel to the IR rating, okay, and it's something that the parts have to follow, right? There is absolutely no seat of the pants flying in an instrument rating, okay, so it's very procedural, as we've said. I've got an IR, just to give you an idea. In over 35 years, it's still the hardest thing I've ever done. And to give you a clue, when I was 3/4 of the way through my training, I got up one morning and swore I never ever wanted to see another aeroplane ever again in my life. All right, that's how difficult it can get. Okay, but if for those that want to persevere, and once you've gained it, actually airways flying instrument rating with an instrument rating is actually one of the easiest trips you'll ever do in a GA aircraft. All right, but obviously in a suitably equipped aeroplane. That's the other rub that you need to think about. So the privileges of the FlyR are shown here. Okay, typically that's what we have. So you can fly in any class of airspace. You can, the minima is defined by the operating, is subject to the minimum as defined by the operating privileges. So for a PPL IR holder, typically in a single crew operation, In an SEP or an MEP, you have typically a minimum visibility requirement of 800 meters. The minimum approach requirement is what's published on the charts for that particular approach. So you could be down to 200 feet above the ground on instruments before you can see the runway and then land on it. It's valid much shorter this time, the full IR, for a period of 12 months, again to the end of the month, from the date of the flight test. And again, you revalidate or renew by flight test. There is no, oh, I've done 6 approaches in the past year, so that counts. It doesn't. It's a test every 12 months to the same standard as required for the full IR, or the initial IR, I should say. So that's the full instrument rating. Okay, so let's have a look at the CBM IR requirements. So, like I said, the full one is really starting from scratch with no experience other than just a PPL license and then a CPL license, and then you carry on. So the CBM IR is a bit more accessible to the people who've got a license and who've got some form of other training. Okay, so to apply for a CBM-IR, you have to hold either a PPL, ATPL, or CPL. Okay, you have to have passed a pure tone audiometry examination as well. That's if you don't have a class 1, you need one of those separately because it's included in a class 1 medical. You have to have completed at least 50 hours of cross-country time as PIC in aeroplanes. You have to have demonstrated a level of theoretical knowledge appropriate to the privileges and holder of an IR. So we talked about those. They can either be the CPL or IR theoretical exams, or a subset of them, or a specific CBM IR exam. You also have to have passed a single pilot, single engine class instrument rating skills test, or an MEP if you want to do it in a twin. And you have to have the ability to use the English language. In other words, you need level 4 or above. The training then, on the next slide, we really are whistling through this. Obviously, there's a little bit more involved in this. So the CBM-IR course comprises of at least 40 hours of instrument time under instruction. That's instrument time. However, additional training may be required to teach further competencies. So, don't think you're going to get away with doing 40 hours and then go for the skills test. You have to be ready for the test. So when the student has completed the instrument flight instruction provided by an IRI, in other words, an instructor that teaches IR, or a flying instructor holding the privilege to provide training for the IR, or you've got previous experience of instrument flight time as PIC on aeroplanes. So if you've held an IMC rating, this can count towards the hours that you need to do. Then under a rating providing the privilege to fly IFR in IMC, like I've said, the IMC rating, then those hours you can credit towards the 40 hours up to a maximum of 30 hours. So all of your IMC training and any subsequent IFR flying that you do can credit you towards the CBM IR, the flying training that is. So when the student has prior instrument flight time under instruction other than what we've just been talked about, then again, you can credit those hours up to a maximum of 15 hours, okay? So that's where the IMC bit comes in. In any case, the flying training shall include at least 10 hours of instrument flight time under the instruction in an aeroplane at an ATO. So all of the other flying training that you do for the IR up to the last 10 hours effectively can be done outside the auspices of a training organisation. So if you've got a friendly flying instructor that has got an IR rating and can teach to it, you can do the majority of your hours required with them, but then you have to do 10 hours with an ATO under supervision of an ATO in order to make sure you're up to speed. So the total amount of dual instruction shouldn't be less than 25 hours in any event. Okay, so you can't just say I've done 30 hours of flying IFR by myself. Thank you very much. That will count. That doesn't wash. Okay, so don't forget even though you might have all of those credits, ultimately you need to be at a very high standard required for the IR flight test. So, minimum hours might not be enough. Just bear that one in mind. The other thing just to bear in mind, having an IR does not make you invincible. Right? There will still be days when you won't want or can't fly. All right. So don't think having an IR is going to mean you can just get up and go in whatever weather. It just does not work like that. So you still need to make some sensible decisions with regards to weather, cloud, and a new thing, icing, because you are now going to be flying much higher, probably, typically in the airways, somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 feet or even higher if the aircraft is equipped with oxygen. Okay, so it's not a ticket to get you home, come what may. So just bear that one in mind. But it is incredibly good fun and very, very rewarding. So we got any more questions, Matt, on that one? Probably
Yeah,
loads.
we have actually. I'll pick them up now. This is a good time to do it. Somebody asked, can you use the IRR in Southern Ireland? The answer is no,
No.
it's UK and Channel Islands only. Some people are asking about renewing IRRs or IMC ratings.
Yeah.
Less than 5 years, training is required, and it's the revalidation flight test. More than 5 years expired, its training is required, and then the initial flight test. And also, if it's expired by more than 10 years, you have to retake the IMC ground exam. All those requirements and all of the credits are still in CAP 804. You remember that reference document that went out of date in, what was it, Nigel? 2000 and...
Ages ago, but still being used, yeah.
Yep. So the only place for all of these requirements for the IMC IRR is still in CAP 804 in those two sections at the minute as well. We've also had quite some questions about from some IR holders that are maybe giving up their IR because they're coming out of the airlines or whatever. Essentially, if you look through those credits in 804, but essentially, if you've had an IR in recent times, it will just be training as required to pass the IMC skills, the IMC flight test, in order to put it on your license. In short, in simplistic terms, very, very useful rating if you're maybe retiring from airline flying and then they're going to become an FI in later career. It's a brilliant rating, very easily accessible to get an ad for FI work there as well. Quite a few questions about color blindness and that as well. We haven't got detail, I haven't got time to go into it detailed here as well. There is information on the CA website. There's also some optometrists that specialize in aviation. But in short terms, there is the ability to take some additional tests to prove a level of color safe color perception that can allow you to obtain night ratings and or IRs as well if you have problems with the normal routine tests. I don't know, Nigel, whether you've ever come across that as well. I've known people go and have extra tests to prove color safe perception.
Yeah. There are some people that are color blind, but they can actually be color safe for the requirement of a night rating. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and somebody's asked, can a PPL and IR training be conducted in a suitably equipped permit LAA aircraft? Nigel, we've had some chat on this recently, as the permit aircraft are allowed to be used, but there's quite the specific circumstances depending whether you own it or whether you don't own it or a part owner, and depending whether it's approved and things like that. So it's probably a bit too much to get into on here, but yes, there is possibility to do training in your own or rented permit aircraft, but there's various circumstances and requirements around. I don't know if you want to make a sort of overall comment about that, Nigel.
No, basically, obviously, the aircraft has to be IFR capable, and there are some permit aircraft that are IFR capable. And as Matt said, if you own the aeroplane, that's not a problem. If you are renting the aeroplane off somebody, then we need to be careful with that. And it depends on what permit it's on, whether it's a CAA, LAA, and then it goes into other concepts as well. So you need to do a bit more digging on that one.
And we've had a question about what do you think about using home simulators to prep for IR training and that as well. My view on this is as well, simulators are great. Be aware of their limitations, but they can be fantastic tools for understanding certain things about instrument flying and practicing them. At the flying club where I've been flying today, they've got kind of a big 3-screen X-plane setup there as well. If you want to go and play around with NDB holds or hold entries, going and doing it on the simulator rather than burning £150 an hour of PA28 time, go and play around with hold entries to your heart's content in the simulator. I think they're massively useful during your course for something like that. I don't know what you think, Nigel.
No, absolutely. Especially if you take an instructor with you when you do the sim, because you have the ability, of course, to pause the sim and you can chat about what's going on, what you need to do, and then continue with the flight. That's the key piece of information. You actually learn a really great amount of information procedurally, not necessarily the skill to do the flying, but procedurally what you need to be doing. Yeah.
And lots of comments about NDB holds. It's obviously struck fear into people as well. I can tell you how many people do NDB holds in real world operations. It's not a very large number.
No.
And remember, NDB holds, all holds is about keeping you in a protected piece of airspace. All the aim with a hold is to get back to the fix every time. That's all a hold is about. It's just about keeping you in a protected airspace. People get very hung up on, micro levels of detail with offsets and gates and holds and that, but all it is, certainly at IRR level, is to keep you in a safe bit of airspace and get you back to the fix routinely. And pretty sure Nigel says similar when people are stressing about it.
Yeah, IRR, that's the place. That's exactly right. For the IR, the full rating, that's a little bit different. You are expected to do a much more refined hold as well. And there's a whole raft of things to do with EFIS and substitution using GPS, and that's a whole saga of regulations in its own, which we're not going to go into now. Yeah.
No, but yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nigel. So instructor qualifications. So let's get everybody thinking again, and let's have a quick poll here. What license do you need to be paid as an instructor? PPL, CPL, ATPL, or a LAPL? So let's give you the choices: PPL, CPL, ATPL, or LAPL. Let's have a look at the answers, see what people have come up with. What? A bit of a split between a PPL and a CPL. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it's actually the correct answer is A. It's a PPL. A PPL with instructor or examiner privileges may receive remuneration for training and testing of LAPL, PPL, and associated ratings or certificates. That is one of the freedoms that EASA and Part FCL, when it was introduced back in the day, gave us, and we have retained. So you can be paid to be an instructor and examiner at PPL and associated rating level on a PPL. You don't actually need a full CPL, so which is something some people don't actually need. And somebody's just made a comment: you do need CPL theory to start the FI course. I'm currently studying it for this reason. That is not it's not actually true. And again, you can be an FI, you do need CPL for, some people are saying that as well, so I'll cover that in a minute. But so instructor qualifications. Have you ever thought about becoming an instructor, or is it something you wish to progress to? So becoming an instructor, one of the most important roles within aviation is training a pilot. And it could mean training for the issue of a license or further training of already qualified pilots. And it doesn't matter whether the student is a basic student or an airline pilot. As an instructor, what you're responsible for is making sure high standards are achieved and maintained. An instructor has 3 key functions: to teach, to set an example, and to display a high standard of knowledge and ability. And you've got to be, as a person, you've got to be enthusiastic, patient, sincere, adaptable, self-aware at all times, both on the ground and in the air. Now, this may sound like a bit of a superhuman feat, but remember your good instructors from early in your flying career. You probably remember them now. You probably remember things they say to you now as well. And they really are inspirations for life as well. So because you have to be this enthusiastic, keen person all the time to set the example, you should really examine your motivation if you do want to progress to become an instructor. And it's not about showing off your skills or getting free flying. And because that will soon manifest itself poorly in front of students. You've got to be really genuinely interested and enthusiastic about training others to succeed and progress. And it's about being as interested in people as actually flying in aeroplanes. Incredibly hard work, but done well, and it really is some of the most rewarding flying you can have in aviation. So as per the poll answer, it may have surprised people to know under Part FCL, PPL can receive remuneration for training. The need for CPL knowledge, i.e. having completed the CPL ground exams, is when going for the FI certificate. Now, as somebody mentioned in the question box earlier, the only exception is an FI who's restricted to providing training for the LAPL only. And you can actually complete the FI course, get an FI rating, but you'll be restricted to providing training for the LAPL only. And there is an increasing number of those people around. The school I was at today has got 2 people like that, that haven't done the CPL ground exams yet. So they are full FIs, but they can only train for the LAPL and LAPL extensions. The need for a CPL license is FCL 915, and that requires instructors to hold the license they're instructing for. So in simple terms, this means that if you're undertaking CPL or higher instruction, either on a modular or an integrated course, you need to hold a CPL yourself. So those are your people flying twins and so on at Oxford and Gloucester and Stapleford and things like that. That's when you need to hold a CPL yourself if you're teaching for CPL. Now, somebody's just asked about the CRI. So as if by magic, this is the next one. A CRI cannot instruct ab initio students, only those who already hold a license. And CRIs typically carry out more tailored instruction. A lot do tail wheel, aerobatics, variant familiarizations, club checkouts, and such like. And some of them may also be appointed and act as LAA coaches, if you've been involved with those as well. Now, potential CRI must hold a relevant license and ratings, but you've got to have 300 hours of flight time of aeroplanes. The course, you can see it there on the right, 35 hours ground tuition, and that includes teaching and learning and technical training. And the flight course itself is 3 hours of flight instruction in the single engine airplane. So it's quite a short, quick course for the CRI. But you've got to have an assessment of competence with a flying instructor examiner, which before you can do that. So it's a very accessible rating, very useful. And if you've got particular skill sets to offer, say in tailwheel or classic aeroplanes or something like that, the CRI is a really useful rating to have. Now, the full FI, this is if you want to give ab initio instruction. There's some requirements there about instrument flight instruction, VFR flight, and as I mentioned, you have to hold a CPL, or if you're just a PPL, you have to have passed the CPL exams unless you want to be restricted at FI only. 200 hours, so a little bit less, and 150 hours PIC. And you can see some of the other requirements there. The course, 25 hours, that's that teaching and learning module, the same as the CRI, but 100 hours of theoretical knowledge instruction. So there's a lot of ground school in the FI course. And the flight training's a lot longer as well. It's 30 hours of flight instruction, and some of it you can actually do as mutual with another student, about 5 hours of those as well. And again, assessment of competence with flying instructor examiner to pass at the end, but then you can add additional qualifications to the FI rating, such as the ability to instruct at night for instrument qualifications, and higher level ratings such as the multi-engined and the FI certificate itself. And those are a bit beyond what we want to talk about tonight. But the thing to note is it's a real pathway. You can continue to grow and develop through your instructing career. And question just come in there. Can you charge as a flight instructor with only PPL and an FI qualification? Yes, you can. You can be a PPL and a CRI, and you can charge for instruction as well. Yep. So on there as well. And somebody asked about becoming the CRI. Hopefully, we covered that one as well. Somebody remembers me as an instructor from Lynham. That's hope you had a good experience. So there. Nigel, over to you for
Okay.
a few more options. We'll wrap this one
Yeah.
up and then we'll get into some questions. We're a little bit over the hour, but that's because we had some brilliant questions from you all as we went through. So it was nice to pick some of those questions up in the relevant sections. But over to Nigel for this final bit.
So as you guessed, we can't do justice at all of the activities you might want to undertake to further your skills as a pilot. So next slide then, let's have a quick look at some of the other options. We're not going to spend too much time on any of these, but here we go. It's something called the CAA Proud Scheme. Some of you may not have heard of that, but you might have heard of some of the organisations that run it. So you get recognition basically for undertaking further piloting tasks and training. It's not all about flying, by the way, the Proud scheme. So some organisations have their own CAA approved scheme. In fact, most of them do, such as, for example, things called wings schemes like the AOPA BMA, and some even flying training organisations have their own approved CAA wings type schemes. Display flying, well, not really for the faint-hearted. It's quite strict, and the mentoring and training is required. That's required before a display authorization is obtained by the CAA. That lets you have the ability to display at air shows, but just be warned, the competition is fierce. Unless you've got something really interesting to display, you're going to be a little bit disappointed, I would suggest. But again, it's all good fun, another feather in your cap. There's various organisations that run like advanced PPL courses, like when you pass your driving test in a car, you can go and do an advanced driver's course. Well, often organisations offer that sort of thing as well. And you do things like give you alternative procedures to do the same thing that you've been taught as a PPL. In other words, more tools in your toolbox, and you usually start to explore the flight envelope of the aircraft in a little more fullness than you were as a PPL. Farm strip courses, short strip courses sort of speak for themselves. Mountain flying, or there's a mountain rating and a towing rating. Towing rating you have to have before you can tow gliders, for example. There's also a towing rating for towing banners, but you won't find many PPLs doing that because that's a paid for job, and you need a CPL to do that. Mountain flying, again, in certain parts of France and Switzerland, you are required to have a mountain flying before you are allowed to go into certain airfields, altiports, and things like that. And formation flying, we're going to cover that in a bit more detail. There was a question on that earlier on, but it most definitely is not a self-taught activity, but we'll cover that, as I said, in a bit more detail later. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. All right, so back to Matt.
Brilliant. There's one question just on that one. Somebody's said they've done a mountain rating elsewhere, but has been told he can't transfer it to his UK license because there's no mountain rating in the UK. Is that correct?
I don't think it is correct. The problem that you've got is that your New Zealand mountain rating will have been done by a New Zealand instructor, and on a Part FCL license, you'll find that instructors have to be you have to be taught by a Part FCL instructor to have the rating put on your Part FCL license. So that's probably where that came from. So you can put a mountain rating on your Part FCL license, yes, of course.
And there's been a couple of comments about complex endorsements and things like that. So when we're talking about that, we're actually talking about differences training. And that is a very easy, accessible thing that you can do with an instructor. It's something a CRI can do or an FI. And we're talking things there like variable pitch propellers, retractable undercarriage, EFIS, single power lever controls, and things like that. And there's not too many Piper Arrows around these days, but the Piper Arrow is a really good machine. I flew a really nice one recently that had EFIS. It was retractable and variable pitch, so you could cover some nice differences training in a couple of flights. Nigel, I don't know whether you've got any retractable, well, other than Harvard, I don't know if you've got any retractables in your fleet these days. They tend to be few and far between, don't they?
Yeah, they're expensive on maintenance. That's why. Yeah.
Yeah, John, the flying reporter, he's covered some of that in some of his things as well. He flies around in an Arrow if you see John around as well. So we've got some questions. Like I say, we've covered quite a few questions as we've gone through the presentation tonight. Some brilliant questions from everybody, but haven't left me reaching for my phone to Google too often. So well done. But there's a couple of questions we'll pick up now. there's a lot of questions about going from an NPPL of various sorts to a PPL. I have to give you some bad news in this regards. Currently, at the minute, if your NPPL was issued after April 2018, the conversion route to a LAPL and then onwards upwards to a PPL is defunct. It's not actually currently there at the minute. That is a function of the ARSA and the transfers there as well. As part of that licensing simplification project that the CAA are conducting, but I mentioned earlier, they are looking to restore that pathway. So those of you that have got NPPL M's in particular will get that pathway regained so that you can transfer and grade up to LAPL and PPL and higher ratings. At the minute, that pathway is not there if it was issued after April 2018, which is really unfortunate. It's well known about, and the CA are trying to address it in the legalese and the regulation. Nigel, I don't know whether you want to comment on that at all in terms of the NPPL pathway. Yeah.
It's a real shame. The key thing is for those of you that had it before 2018, the pathway is still there, and you don't have to go through each of those individual licenses from SSEA from Microlite to SSEA to LAPL to PPL. You can actually just do the training required and go direct from Microlite straight to PPLA, providing you've jumped through the hoops. You don't physically have to have each individual license on the way.
Yeah. And an allied question, somebody's asked about whether helicopter and fixed wing hours count across, and they don't. Everything has to be maintained separately, whether it be A&O licenses or part FCL licenses. I think that's right, isn't it, Nigel?
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no cross credits for maintaining licenses or ratings there as well. One for you, Nigel. Mike has asked, can a night rating be added to a PPL with a personal medical declaration?
Yes, it can, providing you are colour safe. So you have to go through the same process as a LAPL license holder would. So you don't have to have a class 1 or 2 or LAPL medical to get a night rating, but where it's not part of the medical that has tested your colour safeness, then you have to do that, but then you can use it, yeah.
Brilliant. And let's talk about formation now, Nigel. Give us your thoughts on formation flying.
So, as you know, formation, as we've said, it's not a self-taught exercise. It can be incredibly dangerous. In SERA 3135, we're going to put a link to it in the chat box, I think. It basically clearly says that formation flying must not take place unless all aircraft commanders have previously briefed exactly what the formation is to entail, including normal formation operational procedures as well as emergency procedures. If you think formation looks easy, I can guarantee it's only because the people that are doing it are very, very good at it. Okay, it is not easy at all. Never go down the self-improver route. Always seek training from professionals who teach formation, and don't fall in the trap that not all formation pilots make good teachers, by the way. There's a few training organisations that teach formation. We do, Anglian Flight Centres, Ultimate High do, and there's a few others as well. But certainly, it can be really dangerous for the untrained and unwary. Stuff happens really, really quickly in formation. When aircraft touch each other, don't think it's just going to be a glancing blow and you're going to end up with a dent. That's not the way that it works with aeroplanes. They're not designed to withstand stresses in anything other than the aerodynamic sense. And I've got pictures I could show you of some fairly mangled aeroplanes that have actually managed to land, and they just had a glancing blow between each other. So stuff happens really quickly. Just don't underestimate it. There isn't a formation rating. Okay, I think there should be. There is a formation rating. Once you get a display authorization, you can have formation added to a display rating itself, display authorization, that is. But find training from people who who advocate it and have got a proper formation course for you to attend.
Brilliant. Yeah, wise words, Nigel. Wise words. And if you get an RAF Typhoon formating on you, you can assume that your day is going really quite badly, and you may have more to worry about than whether you pre-briefed it or not. So there you go. We've got another question here as well. from, I think it was from John. He mentioned about the value of learning basic aerobatic figures, improving handling awareness and confidence as well. I think we definitely covered that in the aerobatic rating as well. What I would say is, even if you don't want to do the full aerobatic rating, there is schools and instructors that are skilled and competent at kind of spin awareness and looking at the spin, or looking at unusual attitudes and things like that. So even if you haven't got the time or the money to do the full course, you may want to take one or a few flights just to go and do some advanced, unusual attitude recoveries, maybe looking at the incipient spin and incipient spin recovery, and there's some real value in that as well. I know some schools, like Nigel mentioned, do a kind of advanced PPL course that may cover some of those disciplines as well, and there's some really good value in that as well. We've got a question from Judy.
Yeah.
Do post lap or PIC hours count towards IR, or just post PPL hours?
It's post PPL, because you can't put an IR on a Lapple.
So yeah,
So you have to have the PPL license first, and then the cars start counting from there.
There we go. And there was another question. Somebody's recently passed their PPL and wants to become a full-time FI, so looking to do that pathway. Is it worth doing night and IRR, or dive into an ATPL theory first? My advice to you is just try and collect experience and ratings and qualifications as you go along, really. If you do want to become an instructor, getting the night rating and doing an IRR is, I think, massively valuable. The night is very easy and worthwhile doing, but doing an IRR is definitely worthwhile, because it will refine your flying accuracy, and it will make you think about operating an aircraft as opposed to just flying one. I don't know what you think, Nigel. IRR qualified pilots generally fly to a higher accurate standard, I find, compared to people that haven't done that course.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Well done.
Scott has asked, what is the best way to get into warbird flying?
Okay,
Nigel, with the Harvards in the background,
the very short answer is buy your own warbird. is the very short answer. It's not easy to break into that remit of people, mainly because obviously they're so expensive. If I give you a clue, to insure a Spitfire for a seasoned Spitfire pilot, you're looking at 25 grand a year. Okay, so no one in their own mind is going to let someone go fly their Spitfire or warbird for they've just got a few hours under their belt. So it is a really difficult place to get to. It's all about who you know as much as what you know, but you need the relevant experience to begin with, and you probably realistically need a CPL too, because most of the warbird flying these days is SSAC, and any warbird operator worth their salt, they're going to be displaying the aeroplane themselves. They're not going to employ other people to do it. So it's a difficult one, and it's a really difficult place to get to. So good luck with your quest.
Absolutely, yeah. And some people have got into it by being hanger rats over many years, haven't they? So there's many different routes into it as well. There is some questions we've had about hours overseas or hours on microlights counting towards things as well. Quite a complex subject, and it could get quite regulatory and technical. But essentially, if you've got UK Part FCL licenses, if you've got the ability to fly in a foreign country, you can count those hours towards experience and things. But if you're trying to do instructional things or instructional courses, the instructors that you're using will have to be Part FCL qualified, and the courses and the approvals will have to be part of it as well. So that may not, they may not have UK approvals in foreign countries or whatever as well. In terms of microlights, yes, there is ability to use that experience. So if you've done differences training on a microlight and you're using those hours to maintain experience, using your SEP rating to fly those as well, those hours can count towards revalidation by experience. But the hour of an instructor will have to be on an actual SEP aircraft rather than a microlight there as well. It all gets quite tricky, and some of these aircraft, so some of the EV-97s, some of the C-42s, some of them can be registered as Group A or light aircraft, Group A, old money, there you go. Some of them can be registered as SEP, some of them can be registered as microlights, even though the physical aircraft. They could two of them parked side by side on the flight line, and you wouldn't know any difference. Nigel, I'm sure you've come across this before as well.
Yeah. The thing with the microlight is if you want to count it towards the SEP, it has to be a 3-axis microlight. You can't use weight shift to count towards that. So it has to be like for like.
Yeah, brilliant. We've had a few questions as well about seaplane ratings as well.
Yep.
I've never done any seaplane flying at all.
Yep.
Nigel, I don't know if this is something you've done.
Yeah,
I can honestly say I've never experienced it.
I've got a seaplane rating. Yeah,
There we go.
yeah, there you go. It is seriously good fun. Another skill set altogether. Again, if you, I mean, I did it in the EASA land a while back. I went to Italy to do mine at Como. You can sort of combine it with a holiday with your family if you want to go and do the rating in the mornings and then go for the rest of the day with the rest of the family. But very, very, very worthwhile. The only thing if you're going to go and do it abroad is of course you need to make sure that the instructors abroad have got a UK instructor's capability as well to get it on your license. There are a couple of places in the UK that does it. There's a place in Scotland. There's also some places down. I think Rochester. Somebody in Rochester does it as well. So you need to, if you're interested in it, have a look around and go for it. It's really good fun and another set of skills, like I said.
Yeah, definitely looks like some things. So I'm going to tell Mrs. Lane that's it. Me and the family, but Lindsay's off. We're off to Lake Como, so I'll go and tell her straight after this. Brilliant. And a final question before we wrap up. It's coming from Giles. He owns his own share in his own aircraft, which is EFIS equipped. He's been told he cannot do an IRR in it. Is this true? My answer that I would give you is whatever FI or training organisation is going to deliver the course should assess the aircraft for IFR suitability and approvals. And in accordance with standards document 25, there's some good guidance in there as well. Having EFIS is not a total showstopper by itself, but if the initial test is to be carried out in an aircraft without a separate turn coordinator or turn needle, the limited panel parts of the test must be carried out on a separate flight test in a suitably equipped aircraft. So it's a bit of a long-winded answer. But for example, I did some IRR training for somebody who had an EFIS aircraft. We had to go and jump in a PA-28 with traditional round instruments and do a quick 20-minute flight. That's all it took to do the limited panel items as well. Nigel, you've probably come across that before as well.
Just done one today. There you go. So I've done a limited panel flight test for someone to do with an IRR today, and then we go and do the rest of the skills test in his EFIS equipped aircraft tomorrow.
There you go. So, and the revalidation test, so that's for the initial test. The revalidation tests can be done in whatever standby instrumentation is fitted to your aircraft as well. So, for example, if you've got an EFIS Diamond, you can use the standby instruments up the top there, which is actually a standby artificial horizon. But you'll find your friendly examiner, probably like Nigel and myself, will quiz you on how those are powered and how you get them to activate and how long they'll operate on battery power, just to make sure you know what you're doing with them as well. So there you go. Brilliant. Right. Thank you for coming tonight. We hope you've been able to take something away from this evening. And as a reminder, if there's anything you'd like to revisit, a replay of this workshop will be sent in the link with you with a list of resources to support you. Once we finish tonight, a survey will pop up in your window. Please do take the time to fill out this, as your feedback is really valuable to us. If you're wondering what's next, keep an eye out for more details on our social media channels or through CA Skywise. I can tell you now, in March, we've got a whole webinar on PFLs, practice force landings and force landings, with Nigel and myself. There's going to be some great things and be interested to hear you engage in your opinions on that one. We've run out of time. Nigel, thank you as ever. Some great information and experiences there. Talitha has been running everything behind the scenes. Thanks so much as well. Like I say, Chris will be back with us next time. He'll be no doubt watching the video and giving me my debrief from hosting after the event as well. But for now, thanks very much for joining us. I say great engagement all the way through, and we hopefully look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks very much and take care. And thanks
Very
again, Nigel.
See you. Bye bye.